Welcome, friends. This is Archangel. So I was talking to a guy today and we were musing over sexual orientations. He said that science is certain that attraction is nature, not nurture, that the sex you are attracted to is a predisposition you are born with, to which I agree. For example, he cited studies showing the delicate balance between hormones on the developing fetus. If the testosterone is altered even slightly, it can cause an attraction to males even if the developing fetus is male. So then I had a thought. Okay, how much of a being's sexual preference or identity is nurture? Meaning how much is environmental influence? I surmise that gender association is very much environmentally influenced. So the sex you are physiologically and the sex you are predominantly attracted to is a product of nature by and large. Yet after that, perhaps everything else is environment, such as the gender that you identify as, bisexual, trans female, trans male, etc. My thought is that many of these might be survivalist strategies of the individual. Yes, in some cases, who you carry on with sexually, or those in which you find emotional or even physical intimacy, can very much be modified and altered. Now, I realize I may invoke a lot of outrageous indignation, but this piece seems to fit the puzzle in many instances. We can trick or train ourselves into anything. I remember an episode of Star Trek where Picard is captured and brainwashed with torture by the Cardassians. Time and again he was shown 4 lights and told that all he needed to do to stop the torture was to say that he saw 5 lights. Later, after he was released and back on board the Enterprise, he confessed to Counselor Troy that in the moments of pain he actually believed he could see 5 lights. This is analogous to human life because there is so much turmoil, so much ugliness in the world, so much pain that humans can actually alter their neurology to accommodate or adopt ideologies or persona that would have seemed impossible previously. Stimuli, whether positive or negative, has a way of altering human belief and behavior, and thus in the face of such negativity, humans adopt survival strategies. Perhaps bisexuality is a product of such a process. So no matter the situation they face, they will have an alliance with either sex, an intimate closeness which will nourish their soul amidst a sea of strife. Because we understand on some level, alliance with another increases survival odds of both parties. So being user-friendly to either sex, to exude such flexible interchangeability would seemingly provide increased chances of survival in any situation. In such instances, one could argue bisexuality as a survivalist strategy. Perhaps males observe how females are coddled, protected, and pampered all their lives, and then at some point, under duress of pain of male existence, some concede to live as a female. Perhaps sexual identity is also a survival strategy. Perhaps males observe how females are coddled, protected, and pampered all their lives, and then at some point, under duress of pain of male existence, some then concede to live as a female, which speaks to survival by theoretically reducing stressors, avoiding conspicuous predation, thereby increasing longevity. Perhaps some simply dress the part. Perhaps others get hormones and breast implants and live as a female. Perhaps they go full out for gender reassignment surgery. Ultimately, I wonder, maybe male to female anything is an unconscious survival strategy in order to be elevated and protected as a female. Maybe males want to get in on the gynocentric gravy train and be the beneficiaries of privilege for once in their tortured lives. Now, I know many will take offense that I am suggesting that trans females are simply trying to cash in on male devaluation by switching sides. Still, I think the shoe fits in many cases. For one, as I stated in another video, physical sexual anatomy and secondary characteristics are very fluid. One sex can manifest the characteristics of the other. So really, if you are a straight male attracted to females, yet now we can make males look like females? Yeah, how black and white is human sexuality really? Reproduction is fairly black and white. A sperm and an egg. Testicles and a penis, vagina and a uterus. Yet sexuality is a product of the human mind, and it is infinite shades of gray. So perhaps males that are the runts of the litter physically, or who have been coddled and indoctrinated with gynocentrism by mom, or males who are simply tired of the struggle of being male and thus disposable whipping boys, perhaps after enough torture or duress, humans actually form mental pathways that alter their thoughts and redefine their identities and attachments. After enough struggle and turmoil under duress, such males mentally alter the 4 lights into 5. Thus males turning to a feminine identity, whether mentally or aesthetically. This may be a strategy of survival or of pain cessation to end the torment of an abusive male existence. We know the brain is plastic. Old beliefs and identities are dropped and new ones assumed throughout a person's lifetime. Hence, experience informs future identity. Now, in one way, I am saying, yes, some males alter their gender identity or sexual preference as a matter of choice. But this does not alter the import of it being nature as well. You see, survival is a natural instinct imperative. So those things that humans adopt as a survivalist strategy is essentially a natural imperative. It is nature rather than nurture. So yes, we must exist in the dichotomy that perhaps bisexuality or trans anything are choices, yet at the same time it is a product of nature. It is inborn, and these humans were merely adapting to the ever-changing environment in order to obey survivalist instincts, meaning it really was not a choice. In fact, stating that she-males or male-to-female anything is a survivalist strategy shows how gynocentric we are and how misandristic the planet has become, to the point that more and more and more males every day are making the transition. I have not heard that term more than in the last few years from people everywhere regarding the males they know. Oh, he's making the transition. He's transitioning. This is a stout indicator of gynocentrism on this planet, that male-to-female transitions are snowballing. Guys are rejecting male gender indoctrination in ever-increasing numbers, and I don't blame them. Meanwhile, females are not trying to become male, aside from a handful of females that truly identify as males from birth. Still, if a female feigns male appearance, it is window dressing, not physical alteration. That way, she can still claim being a female when the ship sinks, and invoke all the privilege and entitlement that comes with her vagina and uterus being intact, even if she has mastectomies and sports a crew cut and maybe some facial hair from hormonal therapy. She is still, for all intents and purposes, female, still capable of reproduction, and thus more valuable than males in society's eyes. And these female-to-male transitioners know this. They know they are still more valuable than the dirty creatures they seek to emulate aesthetically. So they want to keep their feminine reproductive anatomy intact. Whereas male-to-female transitions involve any number and degree of physical permanent alterations. They are clear they want to claim femininity and invoke the same entitlements biological females get. Yet, at the end of the day, they are still considered male by most citizenry and treated as such. In fact, transsexual males still have to sign up for selective service. So we still impugn males and former males. We abuse anything male, past or present. I imagine many more males would actually try a female transition as a survival strategy if they thought they could pull off a believable female aesthetic appearance. Most males have developed larger facial features or stature that would make their biological male status as obvious as an air horn in a library. Even still, you see these obvious males dress up in makeup and heels and skirts, and think to yourself, why would he do that? He has obvious male features. Why would he want to look like a clown? Again, because being a clown or a freak is perhaps a survival strategy. You are pitiful and repulsive to the point where people leave you alone, or you invoke the pity of others to get by in life. There are so many things I am seeing males invoke as a survival strategy in today's toxic world of misandry and male devaluation. And since we have proven how interchangeable physiology and psychology is between the sexes, it is not a stretch of the imagination to assume that many things we see are actually survivalist strategies. I mean, look at straight males who develop a homosexual relationship while incarcerated, yet resume heterosexual preferences when they are released. This is a survival strategy. So, males seeking to invoke female privilege by alteration of appearance to resemble females, how big of a reach is this? It's not. In fact, I surmise survival is behind more freak-type behavior of males than we really understand. Freak-type sideshows and carnivals that have been around for the better part of the 20th century have featured people with deformities or natural handicaps such as dwarfism, displaying themselves to the public for money. But why? Well, to make a living, to survive. People will adopt all manner of prejudice or mob mentality and commit heinous acts. Why? To keep their heads down and survive, lest their liberty, personal safety, and survival becomes threatened because they try to stop a lynching or they try and speak out about Nazis loading people into cattle cars. The human body is amazingly malleable. We can grow and shrink. We can alter and physically manifest opposing sex characteristics. Really, the human body and genitalia is amazingly diverse. Men can look like women and women like men. And before puberty, most children have a similar beauty, androgynous and transcendent of gender characteristics. Yet we do our best to make boys look male and girls look female, according to our social constructs of gender. But the human body is more aesthetically moldable and interchangeable than most care to admit. Physically and mentally, humans are quite malleable beings. They adapt to the environment to evoke survival from the environment. If there is no meat, they will adapt to a plant diet. If it is dry and hot or cold and windy, they adapt to conform to their surroundings in order to survive. Human anatomy is pliable, but human thought and beliefs are even more so, and humans can and do change to suit different environments in order to elicit survival with the least resistance possible. Thus, if the environment is gynocentric and male abusive, existing off the sacrifice of male life, then doesn't it seem reasonable that a survival strategy would be to assume the identities, even physiology, of the elevated class, females? And now that technology and the politically correct public acceptance is in place, it is easier than ever to change identities. Perhaps this is why we see more and more transitions than ever before. Many say that they knew they were different when they were young, but really, how much of that was response to environment? Your parents told you to act differently than your sister, or discouraged you from playing dress-up, with makeup, or with dolls, and they told you to go outside and hit the ball with a bat. Perhaps, even as a kid, you rejected the male indoctrination you were being fed by everyone, and the more you grew, the greater the indoctrination that limited you to short hair, or sports, or taking care of everyone, and manual labor, like paper routes, or lawn mowing, while you observed girls being coddled. Maybe you grew more and more resentful of this inequity between the treatment of boys and girls, and so in your mind, out of spite, you began to favor and identify with the things you were forbade by society, namely girl stuff. And you were made to be a workhorse even from a young age. Thus, you adopt the predisposition of the privileged sex, because you want to be privileged and treated differently too. You want to be included. You want to have fun. You want freedom to do anything you want, even if it is dolls or makeup parties. Why do you think psychologists always ask about childhood? Because the experiences we have when we are tender of feeling, naive of reason, and immature of thought, this is when seeds of future behavior can be planted without the conscious knowledge of the adult that is now being queried about their childhood. Your experiences as a child and during puberty are crucial to your beliefs or thought patterns as an adult. Yet, all that aside, humans can adapt to anything to survive. Humans can change their sexual attraction to suit environment, such as the aforementioned intimate relations of jailed members of the same sex, despite a conventional God, country, honor, duty upbringing, and despite the fact that they are heterosexual by default. This all suggests that despite childhood, despite trauma, despite indoctrination, despite anything, we can change our thoughts and thus our identities. We can alter ourselves to suit our environment. This is a basic capability and truth of humanity. I simply observe that in a world that is becoming more misandristic and male abusive by the day, perhaps some, that have a subconscious predilection or leaning towards female identifications, these folks are finally saying, screw it, I will aesthetically align with the elevated class, now that technology and social awareness is growing more and more tolerable. Indeed, in other cases, perhaps society worships femininity to the point that males decide to become the very incarnation of that which they worship. They want to experience adoration of themselves, since all they have ever known was scorn and loathing when they faced the world from behind male aesthetics. Now, I know many will attack the musings contained herein, saying that it is born-in predisposition. They did not choose it. How dare I suggest such things? Yet really, I think this is quite a curious proposition, the more I think about our ever-growing gynocentric world and the increase I see in trans people, specifically male to female identifiers. Is it coincidence that I see an increasingly hostile world towards males and an increase in males transitioning to female identities? I simply observe this trend and I am thinking, either there is something in the water affecting genetic sexual identification coding, or there is a huge environmental factor being wholly ignored. And up until recently, people have not really accepted or even formally addressed gynocentrism, misandry, and male devaluation or disposal. So they fought to describe the male to female identity as either genetic or as some form of psychosis, because the prevailing thought of years gone by was that males run the world, males are in charge, males have the privilege, and males have it easy. So why would a male refuse this in favor of trying to become an oppressed, weaker female? Especially when the technology was not there, and such males simply looked like ogres with makeup on, more like clowns, less like actual females. Thus, it was surmised that there was something wrong with the male, emotionally or psychologically. Yet when you take into account our social construct and cultural paradigms, namely that we elevate and worship females while we use and discard males, then it makes sense, and it came to me. What if this is a survival strategy? To camouflage oneself as a member of the elevated class in order to avoid strife and predation. This takes nothing away from anyone who feels transgendered. This does not diminish you or your thoughts, your value, or identity. Still, it is a very curious proposition, altering identity to adapt to environment. There is actually much precedent for this in nature, such as coral fish or garter snakes. So even if you choose to be female, it is still nature, because it is done for survival, and survival is nature. Nature compels survival. Yet we rely on nurture or environment to inform us on which camouflage to adopt to satiate the survivalist instinct. In our constructs of gender polarity, we observe that females are elevated and femininity is worshipped. So thus we have many abused flocking to the camouflage of the modern female. Cosmetics, heels, all manner of aesthetic color and flamboyancy. Moreover, male to female identities is really quite interesting as a survivalist strategy, because most males will refuse to touch them, and females will either accept them into the gyno fold or reject them. Either way, these trans females may receive some mockery, yet, at the end of the day, they will be left alone, thus evading predation, whereas males are not left alone. They are sucked dry of every little ounce of utility females and society can extract from them. And thus, if the trans woman had remained ensconced in male appearance, they would still be subjected to the same utility usurpation as their brothers. However, now they are considered physically and mentally diminutive, docile, less able, and thus in need of protection as well. And of course, who do we extort protection from? Males. Animals switching sex or identities really is a very efficacious strategy. Yet if males claim their transition as choice, it reveals the subterfuge of survival. And males are to be selfless. They are not to go AWOL on their own sex. They are to man up and protect the uteruses in society. So people have to claim inborn tendencies in order to give their transition any validity, or at least to make their switch a point beyond discussion or recall. Yet sexual alteration is an inborn tendency. When you understand that survival is instinct or nature, while choice is nurture, yet when choice is invoked to effect survival, then choice becomes driven by nature as well. So, where are we? Is sexual identification and attraction a choice, Or is it biological programming that you are born with? Well, the answer is yes, to both. My friends, no matter how you identify, stand with me and help males live free.